You should, on average, get about a 2 to 3% raise every year. So the thought process is you're still getting a raise. You're just taking a portion of that raise and putting it to the side to help protect, or have a better retirement when you get there. Some people that make a decent amount of money, the government comes back in and goes, hey, congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you make so much money, you can't contribute to a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA and get the benefits. There's no income limits on a Roth 401k.
Okay, Robert, I'm excited today to talk about 401ks.
As always, so am I. Just being here with you today.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Soak it in. Talk to us about 401ks. How do you know if a 401k makes sense? When to contribute?
How much to contribute?
Yeah, how much to contribute?
Yeah. First, I think you have to understand 401ks. So forever since 401ks have been in existence, there's always your traditional 401k. So what is a traditional 401k? You put in money out of your paycheck into an employer-sponsored plan, right? It's non-tax dollars, so before tax goes in. So these dollars have never been taxed. It grows in the market throughout your working career, hopefully decades and down the road. It grows, and then when you retire, the thought process is that when you retire, you'll be in a lesser tax bracket. That's not always the case, but we'll get to that later. But that when you take those funds out, whether what your contributions of what you put in and the growth of that you will be taxed on the amount that you take out at that time to use for retirement. So that is a traditional 401k and how it works.
Okay. So should everybody be contributing to these?
Everybody's a trick question. Should you contribute to them? Absolutely, as long as your company does a few things, right? So the first thing I would look at is, does your company do a company match, right? So what is a company match? And they can come in all different shapes and sizes, all different numbers, meaning I'll just use a common one. A company matches the first 6% of your salary that you put in. So if you put in 6%, they'll match 100% of that 6%. This isn't every company, but this is
that's like in every paycheck?
Right. It's and it's standard. You put in 6% of your salary, they'll match that 6%. Now, you can put in more than 6%. Okay. You can put in 10, 15, 20, you can put in 50, but they're only going to match that first 6%, which if you have a match, you should absolutely
free
do that
money,
401k.
Right?
That's free money. That's 100% return overnight. We're great wealth managers. I don't think we can't do that. Yeah. So take the free money. So yeah.
What about other types of 401ks?
So this is very interesting. Back in 2001, there was some legislation being passed that allowed for the formation of a Roth 401k. And to this day, people don't even know they exist. The first one came out in January 2006 by just a handful of companies. And every year that passes, they become more and more popular. More and more companies are offering them. But a Roth 401k, similar to a traditional 401k where you still have your contribution limits, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So you can contribute the same amount, right, which is different from a Roth IRA or traditional IRA. But in a Roth 401k, you can contribute the same amount as a traditional 401k. And if your company matches, you will still get that match. But here's the nuance to it. If you get the match, the company wants the tax write-off that year. Sure. So they'll contribute. Let's say you're doing 10%, and for the sake of conversation, let's stick with the 6% that they match. So you're doing 10 into a Roth 401k, 10% of your paycheck. They're going to match you the first 6% of what you do, but their contribution isn't going to go into a Roth. It's going to go into a traditional 401k. So you're going to have two buckets of money there just because they want the tax benefit. Now, what is a Roth? Well, you're putting money in that you are going to get taxed out of your paycheck. So you're getting paid that, you're getting taxed almost like it's going to your bank account. Yeah. But instead of it going to your bank account, it's going into your Roth 401k. What's the beautiful side of that? Well, you've already paid taxes on those dollars, but now whatever that money grows, you will never pay taxes on it in the future when you retire. So let's, for example, say over time, over a 10-year period, you put in $100,000 into a Roth 401k. And you retire 30 years down the road. And let's say over that 30-year time frame, that $100,000 that you contributed, that you paid taxes on, is now worth $500,000. The $400,000 that it grew,
Tax
you
free.
don't. It's tax free. You don't pay a dime of taxes on it. So doing a Roth 401k, if it's offered to your company, is extremely important, extremely valuable. That's an extra icing on the cake.
You know, we weren't going to talk about this, but you just made me think of something.
Uh-oh.
So, tax free. Talk to me about required minimum distributions, because on a traditional, you would have to take required minimum distributions. How does that work in general? Just a 30-second refresher. And what's the benefit of a Roth money? How is that different when it comes to RMDs?
Right. That's a good point. So now the law is an RMD, or required minimum distribution, depending on the year you were born, means that the government, if you have a traditional 401k or a traditional IRA, any money that you've put into the market that has been tax deferred, you've never paid taxes on it. Well, sometimes when people retire, they don't need that money, so they don't want to pay taxes on it. But the government at a certain age is going to force them to take it, because they said, as a line that you like to say a lot, the government goes, you've held on to your money long enough, now you got to pay some tax dollars. So in a traditional 401k or IRA, you're forced to take it at age 73, 74, or 75, depending on the year you were born. Now, so they're going to force you to take it. There's nothing you can do around it, except
You have to take a portion of it.
a portion of it. Usually it's around 4% on average, and that percentage increases as you get older. But when you start, it's a little right about 4%, maybe a little bit under. Now a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA, you've already paid taxes on it. So the government's already got their money. So you are not forced to take. The government's not going to step in at 73 and 74 and 75 and say, you have to take those dollars. But what does that help you do? Well, that also helps you lower your taxable income, because even though Roths are tax exempt, it can still add to any other income that you're taking from. So a Roth 401k, being able to avoid required minimum distributions, can help out in the long run, especially with RMDs.
Thanks for clarifying that. And in terms of how much money you can put in a Roth or a regular 401k, how does that work?
Well, the good thing is the contributions are the same,
Okay.
and this is age specific. So if you're from working age, 18, let's call it, to 50 years old, you're able to contribute the standard amount. This changes every year, every other year. They'll increase it as inflation happens. Currently, in 2025, the contribution max limit is $23,500. Now, I think a common misconception is people think that that's the max they can put in themselves, including what their employer matches.
Yeah.
But that is not the case. That's every dollar they can put in, the employee can put in. They can put themselves up to $23,500. The match goes on top of that. The total maximum amount that you can put into a traditional 401k, or even a traditional 401k, is $70,000. That is what you put in. That is what your company matches. If you happen to have a defined benefit plan, that can go on top of that. If your company allows you to do additional after-tax contributions, that can go on top of that, and you can get to the $70,000. Now, that's everything from 18 to age 50. Now, it used to be.
I was about to ask you that, because I know there's some new laws right now. What is it after you're 50 years old? Are you about to dive into that?
Well, not even after you're 50. Once you turn 50, so 18 to 49, once you turn 50, you come up into what we call catch-up. Mm-hmm. Now, it used to be 50 and above, you just have catch-up until you retire. Now, what is that? It allows you currently, the dollar amount is you can do an additional $7,500 out of your paycheck on top of the $23,500, and that's your max contribution annually.
Okay.
Now, that also increases your max contribution into an employee-sponsored plan with a defined benefit plan with additional after-tax dollars. So if it was $70,000 and now you got $7,500, now you're at $77,500. That can be your max contribution. However, in 2025, that law changed and said from age 50 to 59, you can do that catch-up. But they added a little nuance in there, a little spiciness, where they said from age 60 to 63, so counting age 60, 61, 62, and 63, they have a super catch-up, or what they call an enhanced catch up, where they're going to allow you another $3,750 on top of the $7,500 that you can do on top of the $23,500. So now you're $11,250 above the $23,500, which of course that'll take you now into the 80s, $80,000 as far as what you can do. $81,250 is what you can do in a max contribution into a 401k. Roth will apply to that, but remember, you can only contribute a certain amount to a Roth. The company's contributions are going to go into a traditional 401k.
Okay. Not everybody can afford to maximize their 401k contributions because they're trying to, pay rent, live, eat, get food. If somebody could, they're in a situation financially that they can maximize their 401k contributions, should they? And also tell us a little what the true up is called.
Okay.
Or what it is, right?
I'm going to have to break that one down. So let's say, should they? Well, everybody, we all have budgets, and all of our budgets are different. All of our clients' budgets are different. So especially somebody, maybe they're right out of college and they're just getting started, and they go, I don't know if I can afford to contribute to my 401k. If I can afford anything, what should I do? I would say, at minimum, try your best to do the match, because that's free money. I consider that as a part of your salary. That's a part of your income. Whatever your employee offered you, if your salary was $100,000, but they give you a 6% match, that's $6,000 on the table. It's yours. Take it. So I would say, at minimum, do that.
Okay.
Now, if they can afford any more, then do the math, see what you can afford, add some to it. Some 401ks add a 1% automatic increase to your 401k each year, to where you click a button, and every year, they're not giving you an extra 1%, but every year your 401k contribution is going to increase by 1%.
It comes out of your pocket.
Right.
The employer's not paying more.
It comes out of your pocket. But when you think about it, the average raise a person gets, and this is why they did it this way, because you might not think 1% is that big of a deal. Compounded over 30, 40 years, it's massive.
Sure.
You should, on average, get about a 2 to 3% raise every year. So the thought process is, you're still getting a raise. You're just taking a portion of that raise and putting it to the side to help protect, or have a better retirement when you get there. So definitely do the 1% increase. Of course, if you can afford it, most people don't even notice it. But if you can go above and beyond that, then I'd say go to max it. Max your 401k, especially if you have a Roth 401k. Because, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds in this, some people that make a decent amount of money, the government comes back in and goes, hey, congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you make so much money, you can't contribute to a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA and get the benefits. There's no income limits on a Roth 401k.
Yeah.
So if you are one of those lucky individuals that makes that good money, and they might still be on a budget too, but if you are in that camp, then try to max out your 401k, whether it's Roth or traditional. Now.
Okay, well, let me tee you up.
Sure.
Let's say somebody they get gung-ho, they're like, man, I don't have any money in retirement, I just got a massive raise, I don't know how they do this, maybe they had a massive bonus in January, but they want to go ahead and put, 20 grand in 1 month or over 2 months. But my point is they're kind of front loading it.
Right.
What's something they need to be aware of, why that might hurt them?
Yeah, this is an important factor. A second ago, you brought up true up. Well, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
Let's say they have a standard 401k that does not have a true up, and they put in $20,000, or let's say they just get to the $23,500 in the first 4 months.
Okay.
First 4 months of working, they throw everything they can at it, they've maxed out. Well, if their company does not have a true up, which we'll talk about, then that means they could be missing out on those contributions, because in a standard 401k, the company's going to match 6%, going back to the 6%.
Yeah.
They're going to match the first 6% of your income. Well, if you put in 40% of your income to get to that 23.5 as soon as possible, and you're done after 4 months, what are they going to match? So you want to make sure that
spread it out over the whole year.
You think by loading it up, you'll get some compounding interest. You get it in the market working faster for you.
Yep.
But you could be missing out on thousands of dollars that you're owed. That's in your pay. To me, it's part of your salary. you're missing out on all of that. So you really need to dive into as we say, the devil's in the details. You really need to dive into the details to see what your company offers. If you are lucky enough to where you have something called a true up, well, what does that mean? Well, it's kind of the opposite. You can front load your 401k. And let's play this out. Let's say you have a salary of $300,000, right? Good for you. And you're putting in 6%, your company's matching 6%, right? So that's 18,000 you're putting in, your company's matching 18,000. But let's say you go, you know what? I don't need this money. I'm lucky enough to have a good income. I'm going to front load it over the first 4 months. So in 4 months, you've put in $23,500.
Okay.
Over that 4-month period, what's
They
call it a
match
third?
6%.
Right. They match 6% of that 18,000. So a third, right? So now they've put in $6,000, but you've already maxed out. At the end of the year, the true up is they look at your eligibility, they look at your income, and then they go, you know what? They did max their stuff out. I'm going to make them whole. And that extra $12,000 you're owed, which is not a small chunk of change, bam, they put it into your 401k, and that's your money.
Makes sense. Makes sense. In terms of retirement plans, we're talking about 401k, but what other plans are there that people should be aware of and take advantage of?
As far as 401ks, something else, there's other retirement, and it just depends, or retirement savings out there, but it depends on your job, right? So if you're a teacher, you work for a hospital, you work for the government, there's things like TSP, TRS, 403Bs, 457, simple IRAs and SEP IRAs if you're self-employed.
Yep.
We could probably do an entire episode, maybe we do, as far as how those work and kind of the details of those. But those 401ks and Roth 401ks are kind of the main ones out there.
Okay. And what happens if somebody wants to save for retirement, but they don't have a 403B, 401k, 457? What should they be doing to maximize their retirement?
I would say start with talking to an advisor or a wealth manager and understanding your options, because we just talked about a Roth 401k, or sorry, a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA. But what about brokerage accounts? All of these different types of accounts are taxed differently. So if you don't have the 401k, look at your budget, have a financial plan, see what you can afford to start putting in retirement, and then do things in multiple buckets. Have that tax-deferred bucket of an IRA that you'll pay taxes on later. Have the tax-exempt bucket with the Roth IRA, and then have the taxable bucket of a brokerage account where you're going to pay taxes out of your paycheck on it, but it's going to grow at long-term capital gains, which besides a Roth being taxed at zero, is the cheapest tax we can give you. So understand your options, but then have a plan. You said in another episode, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. Well, you got to have a plan, especially if you don't have a 401k.
How much should somebody contribute into a 401k?
As much
What
as
are your thoughts?
as much as they can, as much as they can afford. But it goes back to doing a plan. Sometimes people think that, okay, well, I'm just going to put in 15%. There's this rule of thumb out there that people talk about that I want to do 15%.
Sure.
Right? And some people that we know always preach the 15% rule. But is that the right number? Is 15% the right number? Well, it depends. How old are you? When do you want to retire? How much money do you need in retirement? What's your goal with the money? What other income sources do you have? Well, the only way to answer that question is have a detailed, personalized, comprehensive financial plan that goes over your situation. I mean, it's easy as a rule of thumb to say that to somebody who's 18, 20, 21 years old, but what if you got a late start in life for no fault of your own? You're just a everyday mom and dad working, taking care of family, and you got some raises, and now you can finally start doing it because you've been taking care of your family. Does that rule apply? I mean, something's better than nothing, but you got to do the math. And you need to talk to a financial advisor or a wealth manager that has the information at their fingertips to give you guidance, the technology at their fingertips to give you guidance, and not just do a Google calculator financial plan, but dive into the details and understand the ever-changing nuances of our environment in the financial world.
Awesome.
So.
There's a lot of good stuff you've gone over. The things that are resonating to me that I think people are going to get out of this is the true up, being aware of what it is and how it works to make sure you're not leaving money on the table. The catch up, the ways that you can put additional money if you're 50 or older. Any last things you want to say as we wrap up this episode?
I think one of the biggest things is if you have a 401k and you're thinking about how much I can contribute, do as much as you can, but definitely do the match. And the next step after that is do some calculations. Have a plan in place to know where you're headed and know if what you're doing is setting your future self up for success and your future family up for success. And the younger you get started, the better, but it's never too late.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. From Michelle, Robert Casey, do you recommend, doesn't say Robert Casey.
They should.
Do you recommend always participating in an employee stock purchase plan? Is there any circumstances where I shouldn't? I don't want to lose money.
Oh, it's the last part that catches you there. Because if you said, should I?
But I want to lose money? That's the different answer.
I mean, you just got to realize the details. If you said, should I contribute to an employee purchase plan? And the first thing I would say is, do you get a discount? Now, standard discounts is 10 to 15%. That's pretty standard.
What does that mean? If somebody
means that-
doesn't know what that means.
Well, okay, I'll just use Walmart, and I'll say Walmart's stock price is $100 a share.
Okay.
Right? And you get a 15% discount. So it's $100 a share, but you get to buy it for $85. Bam.
So it's an immediate gain.
Immediate 15% return right there, as long as the stock
So
stays
unless
there.
you think the stock in that scenario is going to tank,
Right.
even if it stayed flat, you're up 15%, plus
Right.
any dividend perhaps.
But that's the tricky part, right? Because you said, but I don't want to lose money.
Yeah.
Well, Walmart's a solid company, but it could go up or down on any yearly basis. So
Yeah.
if you don't want to lose money, then that's a hard question to answer, because what if you get a 15% gain? You can't just sell it immediately. A lot of times these plans will have a hold period. You have to hold it 6 months, a year, maybe even longer. There's lockout periods. But I would say you have to look at your company. Or have they been around a long time? Do they have a solid financial standing? And even though the market's going to be lumpy, are you willing to take that ride with them, knowing that they're giving you a deal? They're investing in you by letting you have a discount of 15%. I mean, that normally good companies will do that, but the reward could be extremely valuable. And hopefully you believe in them because you're working there. So in almost all cases, I would say yes. But if you're not comfortable with any risk, then it's going to be troublesome investing as a whole, because the only thing that's truly comfortable that you would be comfortable with is CDs and money markets, and you could be leaving a lot of money on the table and maybe not even keeping up with inflation. So you could be hurting yourself.
I think I would add on that it would make sense, to your point, if you believe in that company, you can get that discount. But I also think you want to be careful and not go overboard. We've had some clients work at the Verizons of the world, stuff like that, and they've put a significant part, upwards of 90%, not only buying their company stock in their 401k, but now they're buying ESOP. And a quick way to make a lot of money is to be invested concentrated in one stock. A quick way to lose a ton of money is to be invested heavily in one stock. So I would say, in addition to that, be very careful what percentage of your portfolio, your net worth, that stock represents. I mean, if it's 5%, even if it came down, that shouldn't be too detrimental. But, if it's 50, 60, 70, 80, we've seen upwards of 90% of your net worth in one company. It could work out well, but you got to remember, past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Just because you've had a good 5-10 year run, the last thing you need is right before retirement or during retirement, that stock to turn around and go south. I mean, look at Enron, right? That was a AAA rated company not too long before it went under.
We have clients that used to work there and had company stock. Other ones, I mean, you and I, we've been together for a long time, and we've run into some success stories, but the failures outweigh the successes as far as when it comes to the stories. I mean, we have success stories with people that worked at Home Depot and never went to college, just right out of high school, jumped into it, made millions, right? And it worked. And the hardest thing that you have to do when you meet somebody like that is realize, hey, you won. You did well, but now you need to diversify. Something you love to say is, why risk money you need to make money you don't need? Right? Diversify. Even the best company. Walmart, I don't think would ever go under, but it could. right?
Yeah.
So just because a company's done well for you, take the win. Even Tom Brady retired at some point, right? You get enough wins, but sometimes you got to take that win and ride out on a high
Makes you
horse.
think of Amazon. Amazon's doing amazing. Jeff Bezos has said in his book, has been quoted as that one day it won't no longer exist. Now that might be 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, but if you own it at a time and it's a lot of your net worth, that's a problem.
There was an executive with Amazon that said they could see Amazon one day going bankrupt. Now it's a great.
By the way, we like Amazon for the record.
Yeah, we do. It's in our model, but as much as we like it, we're not going to put 100% of somebody's assets in it. And one of those tough stories, luckily it worked out well for us, as we've said it before on the show, is a client that was with JCPenney for a long time.
Yep.
A lot of their net worth in JCPenney. Finally, when they came to us, they already knew we were going to try and get them out of it. And I love the story they tell when they're at client events. Like, I knew they were going to try and talk me out of JCPenney, and I finally did it. I finally let them. Well, look at JCPenney now.
Yep.
You know, even JCPenney 20 years ago was a department store that we all went and shopped at. We all did Christmas gifts, especially around Christmas time. I was in JCPenney, and now it's done. It doesn't exist. But the problem is 15 years ago we knew they were in trouble, right? So even great companies that are companies that used to be great can go in trouble. So take your win, take the W, and enjoy it, and just diversify after that.
Perfect. Thanks, Robert.
My
Thanks,
pleasure.
everybody. See you next time.